Oh man, it feels like the never-ending. What's it called again when you just live the same Groundhog Day? It's Groundhog Day
Yeah.
in the St. Louis Cardinals offseason, as it's another day and another nothing to talk about. But today we're going to talk about nothing with Bernie Miklasz and preview a little bit of warm up, kind of reflect on what feels like a failure of an offseason so far and what went wrong for the St. Louis Cardinals in this frozen offseason on this episode of Dealing the Cards. Welcome back to Dealing the Cards. I'm Josh, back again with Andrew, Sandy, and Bernie. Bernie, thanks for checking in with us today. How have you been doing? How was your holidays? We haven't seen you since the good old charity live stream earlier in December.
Yeah, which I really enjoyed, by the way. So thank you again. No, everything's been great, man. Just very busy here on the content farm and, keep cranking stuff out. Need to try to start writing a little more like you do, Josh. But I'm always up to something. So it's been good. I wish the Cardinals would give us more content, more stuff to write and talk about. It is the strangest offseason that I have ever sat through as a media person, and I started writing about the Cardinals in 1985. And then as a columnist from 1989 to this day forward, I don't get it. Nothing's happened, like nothing.
Insane. I was joking with you before we started. It feels like the Cardinals think there's another lockout happening, and they're just the only ones who are unaware that you can do something right now if you'd like to, Mo. But here's where we're at. But hey, you mentioned it off the top. There's a divisional round of the NFL playoffs coming up here soon. So there is there's actual sports out there to talk about. And we want to quickly plug one of our partners of the podcast. It's Underdog Fantasy. They're our favorite place to play fantasy. You got to check out Pick'em. It's so easy to play. You just pick 2 to 8 stats and you pick whether they'll go higher or lower. And you can earn up to 20 times your money by going 5 for 5. If that sounds like fun, sign up with their promo code CARDS to claim your first free Pick'em and a first time deposit offer up to $1,000 in bonus cash. Sandy is a merchant when it comes to college basketball pick'ems. So if you ever want to follow Sandy, just ask him what he's got going on. But obviously a lot of big football games this weekend. And, at some point there'll be some baseball to talk about. So maybe you can pick the over-under on Miles Michaelis strikeouts at 3.5. But go check out Underdog Fantasy. Use our promo code CARDS. You can play in Missouri, Illinois, I think most of the surrounding states at this point. But they're our favorite place to play fantasy sports. But
hey, Sandy, Mizzou 3-0 covering the spread in the SEC. 4-1 as an underdog this season, covering the spread. So see, there you go.
Yeah, huge.
Keeping up with the trends.
The other day, that was awesome.
It was. It really was. So go ahead. I'm sorry. I just had to be a brat and cut in. Go ahead.
No, it's great. Sandy's a Baylor fan, so I don't know how much he's rooting for Mizzou these days. But
show up to play the other night. Baylor's been getting on my nerves this year.
So with winter warm-up coming this weekend, it feels like everyone's kind of got their winter puns going for the Cardinals and how they seem to be frozen in time this winter. Bernie, if we could go back to September 30th, and I told you that right after the end of the season press conference, and it felt like, hey, maybe some veterans will be traded. Maybe they'll gut the roster a little bit and go reset, not rebuild, but reset, And I told you this is where we're at today. Your reaction would have been what?
I was really, really surprised. I mean, listen, we have to take note to try to be fair that their actions, if that's the word, is, they made it clear that Goldschmidt wouldn't be coming back. They made that decision. They made the decision not to pick up the options for Lynn or Gibson. All of their activity has been below the major league level, and it's very valuable work, as we all agree, and it's very overdue, and I'm really excited about it. But as far as the major league club, nothing's been happening. They haven't signed anyone. They haven't brought anyone in trades that would make the team better for 2025. But they also haven't used some potential trade assets like Helsley and Fetty, guys who will be in their walk year. They haven't used them to make trades that would benefit and strengthen the team for the future. I call it the Mozeliak middle. And here we are again, his final offseason. We are directly in the Mozeliak mediocre middle once again.
Oh man.
Right?
It feels like the worst place to be in sports. Like if it feels directionless when you're stuck in the middle, especially when you're not ascending toward the middle or you're not descending downward in the tracks. It really just feels like they're kind of treading in place at this point. But what do you think? Like if I were to, there's a lot of directions you can go with this, I'm sure, but what would you say went wrong for them this offseason? Do you think this inactivity is their own doing and they're getting in their own way? Or how much of this do you think is a reaction to what the market has been?
probably a little bit of everything, but I would say this. I think a lot of, well, obviously a lot of it has to do with they obviously wanted in the offseason looking to trade Nolan Arenado. Once it became apparent that a big objective was to cut salary this offseason, they have been aggressive about that so far. But a lot of other things can't kick in unless they're able to find a new home for Arenado. But I just want to ask you guys, Sandy, certainly want to get your opinion. All of you, everybody, Andrew, my friend, everybody. But part of me and part of me just can't help but think that John Mozeliak, is having a hard time dealing with the reality. I mean, he would say no, of course, but the smart thing to do if you want to make it easier, better for Chaim Bloom, who's going to succeed you and someone you like and respect and help bring to the organization, the best thing to do is to set it up in a way that's going to be better for the next regime. But I can't help but think Mozeliak can't quite let go of this notion that, well, everybody's counting us out. Everyone's saying we're terrible. And I really want to show we can exceed expectations. We can have a good club. We can win. We can be exciting, and hinting that they can make the playoffs. And so I think he's having a hard time letting go. And I think that's why they're in the middle, because they just won't be aggressive. They won't do like a real actual rebuild. They won't do that. But they say they want to win next season, but yet they won't do anything to boost that cause. It's just, again, I'm repeating myself, but they're in the middle. They're stuck in the middle, and it's you get nowhere by doing that.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. This club feels to me a lot like last year's club. It's the exact same on paper minus Paul Goldschmidt. And maybe moving on from Goldschmidt and getting an extra year of experience makes the club marginally better. But you also can't count on some of your relievers having great performances again this year, guys that were under the radar last year that excelled. I mean, Chris Roycroft might be slightly worse. Kyle Leahy might be slightly worse, right? You may not be able to count on a full season of health from a Ryan Helsley. And it's possible that Miles Miklasz regresses more. So there are definitely ways the team could get worse next year. Who knows what Nolan Arenado looks like. But last year's team won 84 games, and that wasn't enough to make the playoffs. It wasn't enough to secure a top pick. Now, the Cardinals got really lucky and ended up lucking out in the draft lottery, but they didn't secure great odds for themselves. And what that does is those 84 wins are kind of useless. The Cardinals weren't even in contention in September, so it wasn't like 2016 where they were sort of in it to the last day at least, and you kept fans interested. They were out of it in early September, if not late August this year. And so it kind of feels like the same product you're putting out next year, and I just don't know what that does for the franchise. You're absolutely right, Bernie. 100% it's directionless, and yeah, it doesn't seem like Mozeliak's setting people up for success. Now, the behind-the-scenes moves are really good. Like, we're all fans of the personnel that are coming in. But besides that, I don't know. It's the exact same club, and it doesn't seem like the team's going to be terrible. It doesn't look like they're going to win 60 games, and it certainly doesn't look like they're going to win 90. So I just don't know what the plan is.
Yeah, and I definitely think that he would probably wants to spend some of that money that is being allocated into player development on the roster. It seems like that's what he did last year, bringing in Lance Lynn and Kyle Gibson to supplement the rotation. And I mean, I'll give him credit where it's due. Like, those were moves that made the team better, and those were moves that were supposed to help the team get into the postseason. It's just that some of those other guys didn't necessarily perform up to expectations. But it's clear now that the team is not going in that direction, and they're not going to sign one-year stopgaps starting pitchers to try to patch the rotation and try to get a couple of those budget bats that they might still be interested in. And I'm pretty sure that, like, Mo wants to go out on a winning season, and it makes sense just for his legacy and to not end on what would it be, like 2 of 3 losing seasons and missing the playoffs 3 years in a row. But I think he does have to know that, like, some of these moves need to be made, and to set this organization up for success in the future, you have to move on from some of these assets. Like Eric Fetty especially is somebody that I just don't see any reason to hold on to past this offseason, because his value is at an all-time high. Starting pitchers of that caliber are getting way more money than he's being paid. And there's real chances that he can regress to what he was before he left for Korea. And that's last season was kind of the only good season he's had in the major leagues. And you just don't know with some of these guys. And with Ryan Helsley, he could get hurt. Obviously, some of the reliever returns haven't been as great as we maybe thought at going into the offseason for Ryan Helsley. Like the Brewers didn't get all that much back for Devin Williams, at least what we would expect from Ryan Helsley. But I mean, you're running out the same roster, and I'm sure Mo will get asked this next weekend. Maybe Josh will ask him some hard questions, like some of our viewers want him to. But
yeah, apparently I'm not hard enough. So
yeah, and maybe he has good reasons for doing all this, and maybe the roster does end up sneaking into the playoffs. But in a national league that has so many teams that are going all in, like the Diamondbacks are going all in, even though there's two powerhouses in that division. The Padres seem to not want to let go of some of those signings and want to go for it again this year. Dodgers are going all in, obviously. The Mets are going all in. The Phillies seem to be going all in. The Cubs even, I mean, I don't know if they're going all in. The Kyle Tucker arbitration case just came to a close, but I thought it was pretty funny that it didn't seem to get off on the right foot. But like, there's teams that are out there getting better. And the Cardinals sitting at 84 wins didn't really get better. They didn't really get worse. But 84 wins is just not enough in a league with all of these teams that are spending upwards of $400 million on their salary. And I mean, you can get into the playoffs, but that's not enough anymore, right? The last couple Cardinal playoff runs just haven't gone the way that fans wanted. And at a certain point, you need to build a team that can actually compete in the postseason, not just get in. And that doesn't seem to be the goal anymore.
Yeah. I don't know about you guys. I'm not of the opinion that like that there's a huge divide probably between Bloom and Mo, and that Bloom's not able to do what he wants to do because Mo is doing his thing. Like, I'm sure they're having conversations. Doesn't mean Bloom's getting like this is exactly how Bloom would have done the offseason, but I don't think that I think, but regardless, this was the concern when you keep Mo in charge. Is that you get a middling off season, because I mean, I would expect that if Bloom was coming in, I don't know if he would have wanted to go full first off season with the Red Sox where he's making himself the enemy of the town. But honestly, I don't know how many people would have been annoyed with him for trading Arenado and Helsley and Fetty. I think most Cardinal fans can look at that and say, okay, they're choosing a direction where we've been craving this for a while. And I mean, there's some comments in the chat too. Like, it is kind of amazing last year that they won, 83, 84 games. And they did it with the kinds of seasons that Goldie, Nato, Gorman, Walker had. Like, if you told me the offense is going to be that bad last year, I would have told you they're a 71, 72 win team, and they outperformed a lot of that. And so, sure, there are reasons to be like, okay, you keep the same roster intact. The young talent takes steps forward. This team is better than last year. But my question for you, Bernie, is can 2025 actually be a success if they basically just run back the same roster and are a competitive team, but not quite a playoff team? And sure, they're not bad, and they maybe outperformed what most people are giving them expectations wise this year, but it didn't really mean much in terms of meaningful baseball. And at the same time, they're even though they are giving at bats to Walker and Gorman and New Barn guys like that, they are breaking news.
The Cardinals signed left-handed pitcher Robbie Williams to a 1-year contract. They did something. I don't even know what that is. Oh, actually, that's a parody. I lied.
Oh my gosh.
Andrew.
I am dumb. Never mind.
We're at the point in the offseason where Andrew's falling for.
Okay, I just saw something and I was like,
that's
okay,
good.
Never mind.
It's entertainment. That's good.
Got my adrenaline going for once. I was like, something's happening.
I saw something and I was like, it seemed like a Mo move. I was like, who is this person?
We got to clip that.
Robbie Grossman coming here to be a platoon.
Wow.
Yeah. So, no, I don't listen. It's hard to answer, Josh, because we don't know if there's going to be some supplemental moves. We don't know whether Arenado's going to get traded. I would think they'd have to buy some insurance for their bullpen, right?
Yeah.
I also
they have to
think
make some moves.
Right. I think they could use another right-handed bat. I think John Mozeliak alluded to that, talking to Tom Ackerman on KMOX. And is it a right-handed bat who could also play center field? There's a few guys out there that would fit that category. So I do expect that they're going to add something, but more than anything, and this is hardly a revelation, like where it's like, oh man, that's great knowledge, Bernie. No, the people that they really want to play a lot are going to just have to do a lot better. And I think there's the potential to do better, maybe better than we expect. Maybe, wow, they're really better. Talking about Gorman and Walker and Nootbaar staying on the field, maybe starting 135 games or so rather than 104. If Burleson's around, can he put together a full 6 months because he kind of tapered off? Is it a situation where, what's a full season and assuming he stays healthy? I mean, Wilson Contreras is a superb hitter. He's an exciting hitter. And he played 84 games last year. And now you're almost going to be able to not literally double it, but you're going to now have him 75, 80% of the time. That's a lot of offense you didn't get last year. And as long as Ali Marmol is not totally hung up on Pedro Pages and like listening to the pitchers who love throwing to Pages, Herrera is a chance to really upgrade your offense at a spot where, before Contreras, you weren't getting much offense from. So part of it is lineup decisions. Don't get me wrong, man. I really like Michael Ciani, but I think they've gone a little overboard on this. And it's someone who wrote all kinds of stuff praising Ciani, but he had one good run last year, and I don't know that means that anything's changed. He also had a massively high batting average with balls in play when he had his one really good streak. It was something like 480 or something, right? And so they could in effect have a stronger outfield offensively, which is going to be a big challenge. If say Donovan's in left a lot, you get comfortable with the idea of playing Nootbaar in center, give you average at worst, slightly below average defense. And then Walker comes on in right field. Gorman has a good year. You all get what I'm saying. I'm rambling now, but it's just kind of this is sort of the whole point of the season. Them hoping that these players, most of whom who have sort of plateaued to an extent, will find that next level up. And that's going to be the key to everything. That and a lot of at-bats from Wilson Contreras.
Yeah, I think I'm thinking the same thing you are. It's like not all, I'm going to phrase it a little differently here, but not all like 82 win seasons are created equally, because the 82 win season, 80, 83 or 84, whatever they just had was incredibly unexciting. Like you look at it and the bullpen was great, but bullpen, like reliever volatility is a real thing. And you can't count on really any of these guys except Ryan Helsley coming back next year and being awesome. The rotation was a bunch of old guys who aren't going to be on the team in 2026, some of whom aren't going to be on the team in 2025. So who cares, right? Like, who cares if Miles Michaelis is decent this year? He's not coming back. Who cares how good Lance Lynn was last year? He's probably not pitching for the team this year. You look at these guys, right? And then the offense, which is where you needed to see growth, was awful. So if the Cardinals win 82 games this year, but the strength of the team is the young bats, right? If Brendan Donovan cements himself as a top 3 utility player in baseball, right? If Nolan Gorman bounces back and looks like he did in 2023, if Jordan Walker explodes and receives down ballot MVP support, but the pitching is terrible and the bullpen's terrible, and it's a frustrating team that's, finds their way into 82 to 84 wins, that's a much better thing going into 2026 than a repeat of last year's team, where they were really lucky to win that many games, and there's just not a lot of projectable growth. So I think it just depends on the growth you see. If you see that growth from those players, the season's a success, because then you can look at 2026 and say, great, now we have these young pitchers that are ready, right? Because Matthews is going to be ready for 2026. Hopefully one of Tink Hence, Cooper Jerpy, and Tekoa Roby is ready to slide into the rotation in 2026. You've got other talent coming through the pipeline. The low minors are chock full of young talent for the Cardinals, whether it's guys like Lynn or some of these other young guys, Darlin Saladin. Kareem and I were talking about that yesterday. So if that's the story, then it's great. But if the story is last year and you're saying we have to move on from these bats, they ain't it. Now you're talking about rebuilding again and hoping some of the young bats in the system, like a Chase Davis maybe, or a Thomas Sajazi can provide impact talent. And none of those guys are the same level of prospect that Gorman and Walker were. So you're really where you were in 2021, 2020, but worse.
Can I ask you guys a question? This is very much related to what we're talking about. I think we all agree that to an extent, Nolan Gorman is polarizing. Sorry. He's polarizing because there's a faction of the fan base, which is kind of like, well, they made a mistake. They should have traded him, or they should trade him now. They've lost all patience with him, which I just totally disagree with. But he is polarizing. In my YouTube videos, I get comments on Gorman all the time. Trade him now while you still can. All right. They'd be the first people also to go nuts if he goes somewhere else and hits 38 bombs, right? So I think Lars Nootbaar is definitely polarizing, and I learned that after doing a video this week where I broke down actually broke down how good he really is when he plays.
It's awesome.
But people are just he's average at best. He's a fourth outfielder. He's just a guy. I mean,
how are we still saying that?
It frankly just drives me crazy. If I could say what I really wanted to say, I'd probably lose my entire audience. But anyway, a guy that I think is more polarizing, and I'm not suggesting that he's really polarizing, but a guy that is kind of polarizing, and it surprises me, is Brendan Donovan. Now, that's why I wanted to throw it to you guys, because as Joe Strauss would say, the late Joe Strauss, I'm a Donovan honk. I think he's terrific. Yet when I say something or write something good about him, I get a lot of pushback, and I don't. Damn, it's a confusing time to write and talk about the Cardinals, right? I mean, they can't all be Juan Soto, okay?
Yep. And it's like if you start to act like they are any good, then you're insinuating they are Juan Soto. It's like, okay, you can. There's a level of player that's very valuable in this league that doesn't have to be a superstar. And you look at the Dodgers, and yes, they do have the superstars, but they also have the supplemental talent that helps you win games, right? I'm as big of a Brendan Donovan fan as there is out there. I mean, even just like anecdotally in the background, the way that he's already emerged as a leader in the clubhouse, and he's a guy that last season, unprompted, like winter warmup was really the start of it last year. We had Jordan Walker, you had Ollie, you had Mozeliak, you had I think Nootbaar, there were Burleson. There was just all these different guys that would just name drop Donovan as a guy that had been texting them, getting the group chat going, that had been helping them with their swing. Now, I mean, not last year saying you help someone with their swing maybe isn't the highest praise in the world based on what the results happened. But I mean, he's a guy that in his career is almost 20% above league average at the plate. Like that's a really good hitter. He can play quality defense all over the diamond. He's a consistently over a 3-win player if he's playing every day, and that's a top 100 player in baseball. Most years, the 100th best, most valuable player is like a 3-win player. Like I don't understand the Brendan Donovan hate, if I'm being honest. And I think you're at this place at the Cardinals that it's just easy to hate on everything about them, and so no one really wants to love any of them. And when they lack a true superstar, you're trying to like fit all these people into that mold. And since someone can measure up to that, then you see the flaws a lot more. But I think Andrew and Sandy agree too. I think we're all pretty big Donovan fans here.
Yeah, I mean,
go ahead,
Donovan,
Sandy. Sorry, buddy.
So Ben Zobrist has this like Hall of Fame discussion around him right now. I know I'm bringing something else, but I'm going to connect it here in a second. And people are talking about Ben Zobrist as the first like great utility player, and that maybe he deserves a real look at the Hall of Fame because of the role he was playing and the way he was excelling. I'm not saying Brendan Donovan is Ben Zobrist, but his per 162 numbers are actually pretty similar. He has a higher career OPS plus than Zobrist had through his first 3 seasons. It's a 116 right now, which when you're talking about a guy that was pretty unheralded throughout the minor leagues, that's incredible for the Cardinals to luck into that. You're correct. He's a 3.7 win player per 162 played. Really, the only thing you can complain about with Donovan is availability. And it's 2 injuries. It's not like it's really his fault, one of which he was going to play through if the team was competitive. So it's really not his fault that he's not on the field. The team kind of just wasn't any good in 2023, and it wasn't worth letting him recover in the offseason. Brendan Donovan is an outstanding player, though. And I'm not saying he's on track to be Ben Zobrist, but if he's the best utility player baseball had had to that point, Donovan's at least in the same conversation of hyper-successful utility players, guys that are completely underrated around the league. He's an above-average hitter. He plays good, great defense anywhere you plug him in. He's a super valuable player. He's the exact type of player the Cardinals need right now. And I don't understand the trade talk, and I really don't understand the Brendan Donovan downers. I don't know how you complain about him when there are 10 other guys worth complaining about on the team too.
No doubt about it. No doubt about it.
Yeah, I think he's, if I remember right from recently, something I wrote, I think he's top 15 in all of baseball and on-base percentage since he came up in 2022. He's like top 55 or top 60 in WRC plus or something like that. Like, I think people also like try to act like he's not a very good hitter either. And I don't know. I just think he's a Swiss Army knife too. Like there's a part of the season where he's batting like 5th or 6th for them and he was the run producer. There's parts of the season where he was the on-base guy at the top of the lineup. I mean, you put him a second, third, if you put him a shortstop in a pinch, if you really need it, first, left field, right field. I don't know what there is. And I don't know how you could hate on Brendan Donovan. But before we continue the conversation, I want to thank another one of our sponsors of the podcast, and that's 314 Sports Cards and Collectibles. We hosted our charity live stream there earlier last month, and they're just been an awesome sponsor of the podcast. They're located at 9640 All Boulevard in Olivet. They're open 10 to 5 Monday through Friday and 9 to 4 on Saturdays. They buy, sell, and trade all sports cards and Pokemon cards, and they have the newest selections of packs and boxes and single cards of local players and stars around the league. You can see a Jack Caglione and a Oliver Marmol cards that Andrew's been holding up there. So whether you want a classic manager card in there, or you want the newest potential two-way stars around the league, 314 is your place to get your sports cards and memorabilia. So make sure you go check them out and let them know we sent you. Just to kind of tie a bow on this real quick, and then I kind of want to talk a little bit about some of the younger guys in the system that we may potentially be able to see this year if they're not blocked by other things. Because there's actually an interesting comment about JJ Weatherhole I want to get into with you, Bernie, about because I heard a really interesting idea from Brian Walton and Kyle Reese the other day that I'm like, this could be interesting. But do you think this is how the Cardinals envision the offseason going outside of, obviously they thought they're going to trade Arenado, but like the Fetty, the Matts, the Helsley, like, do you think from the very beginning they were pretty gung-ho on sticking to their guns with their guys? Or do you think they kind of envisioned at this point there really would be paths toward the youth movement? Because, I mean, even go back to late September, it felt like they were kind of already penciling in Michael McGreevy to the rotation. And now they're like, oh, yeah, he could be a bullpen arm, and we'll see what happens here. It just feels like the opportunities for young guys were supposed to be there. And it feels like as the offseason's progressed, they've started to like kind of clench their fists a little bit more and to kind of rein that back in. I don't understand it.
I don't get it.
Yeah, I don't understand it either. And you know, we've talked about this, and I know I've to an extent I've kind of beat this into the ground a little bit, but you know, this idea of like playing younger guys and giving them a lot of run, they did that last year. And you know, and I certainly can back it up with stats on this. I mean, you know, so when they say, well, we really want to give the young guys a chance this year, you know, last season their position players that age 25 and younger played the most games and had the most plate appearances in the major leagues. You know, so it's not as if we didn't get a good long look at these guys last year. Now I want to get a longer look, and I want. One of the points being that they can't freak out when Gorman has a bad week. They can't freak out if Walker's hitting a lot of ground balls. They got to let them try to play through it and grow through it, or what's the point? So, but that's why I think I'm turning really skeptical about anything that the Cardinals want to try to tell us, because it's like, well, wait a minute. I mean, you did play these guys a lot last year. So this isn't exactly a new objective. Maybe you're going to go stronger into it. But am I going to see Ivan Herrera behind the plate? You know, are you going to commit to him, or are you going to go with the guy who probably a better receiver, but does not have Herrera's upside, not even close? I mean, are you going to, I don't even know what to say about the outfield, because I guess we all will realize after a while that Michael Ciani is, in fact, going to be the next Duke Snyder or something. I don't know. So I had to throw an old golden oldie in there. So I don't know, man, because even the thing they say they really want to do, first of all, they did a lot of that last season, so it's not new. And number two, to summarize, number two, they still have kind of a bottleneck. They still have paths blocked for some of these guys, especially if they don't trade Arenado. So it's kind of going around in circles, you know. I wish I had something new and something brilliant to say about it, but they're killing my brain cells, guys.
To be fair, with the giving young guys exposure last year, they did have the most. You said under 25-year-old players.
We're 25 and under, yeah.
Yeah, I mean they did have the most of that, but it wasn't really the guys you want to see getting those plate appearances, which I think is worth noting. Like
Sure.
Jose Fermin soaked up. He appeared in 45 games. Dylan Carlson, 138 plate appearances, but he was already in the Cardinals' eyes washed at that point. Right. Ivan Herrera only appeared in 72 games, and you obviously want a longer look from him. Sure. Michael Ciani, 124 of those games. The only guy that they really gave like a true extended look to last year was Mason Wynn, and that went really, really well, outside of Ciani, who appeared in like the 6th most games on the whole team. It's just like, I feel like even though they did give a lot of total appearances, the way they allocated them, and it's by necessity, it's because of injuries, and it's because you just could not let Nolan Gorman strike out 48% of the time anymore. You just physically could not do that as a ball club. But the allocation of those appearances, it's so spread out, and there are so many guys on there that just don't really matter as prospects anymore either. Again, the Carlsons of the world, the Fermins, Lucan Baker appearing in 22 games. Like a lot of these guys are either non-prospects or they're players that you're just not that interested in anyway. And the guys that actually need that exposure still didn't get it. Jordan Walker last year, even though, the start was really bad, like he still only appeared in 51 games last year with the team. He didn't even get 200 plate appearances. So I think there are still a lot of young guys that they need to do again. And that's partly on them. Like you had a year last year to get these guys opportunities. And because maybe you could win, maybe you couldn't. And obviously things are out of their control. They didn't get that done. And so now we have to do it again this year in 2025.
Yeah, and I agree. I agree with, I'm sorry, man. I agree with what you said. I think they started it last year and they went a long way with it. But what you're saying, and I agree with, they didn't go far enough. Yeah. And there were some opportunities that they missed because of their own lack of judgment, both in the dugout and upstairs. So yeah, they can go deeper into this movement. I hope they do. I don't quite trust them to do that though. I just really don't.
The way they're holding on to these veteran pitchers, right? It's like if Quinn Matthews has the spring training of a lifetime and he's ready to pitch, or if he has the great April, right? And he's ready on May 1st, like, is he going to get into the rotation at this point? I think 2 months ago, I would have said, absolutely, we're going to see Quinn Matthews if he's ready. But now I'm like, maybe he just sits in Memphis, and that's going to piss me off. I mean, it's really going to be upsetting.
Here's my answer. It's in the form of a question. Okay. What would be, let's assume that Quinn Matthews is pitching really well. Obviously, we're not talking about if he's struggling and all that. If he's pitching really well at Memphis, what would be the typical Mozeliak middle move as far as when to bring him up? You know, like what date would you have in mind? Like what date would you have in mind?
The trade deadline? I don't know.
Please. July?
Probably like June, late June, early June. I don't know. Late though, too late is what I think.
Yeah. It'd be like after 4 guys go on the IL, like, oh, maybe we could try the Quinn Matthews guy now.
Where they don't have
maybe
anybody,
you should have been already in there. But
I don't know if I like that idea, honestly, because they keep rushing all these guys and they don't really work out, like Walker and Scott and like some of these guys. I don't know. There's just I'm fine with him being more hesitant with Matthews, but there's these other guys that need opportunities that they're ready, and it's just like
I like that they're not like banking on the fact that he has to be in the rotation right now. I just don't like how it looks like right now. It's hard to figure out how they put him in if he's ready without them making a move that you just don't see them do. Like I have a hard time believing in the middle of May they'll DFA Miklasz. I just do. Even if he's horrible, it's like I feel like they'll hold on a little bit too long. Matz, I mean, I guess he's the guy where it's like they haven't been afraid to put him in the bullpen before, and honestly, he might be on the IL by that point anyway. So you never really know. And I mean, pitching injuries do happen, so there will be spaces that open up. But to your point, Andrew, there's McGreevy that needs chances. Does
Yes.
Graceffo get chances in the rotation of the bullpen? Like what happens with a Summer Bursa? I mean, you've got Tink Hens and Takao Roby on the 40-man roster now. You've got Matthew Liberatore. Apparently, they're going to let stretch out again. I Derek Gould threw out
Please,
Kyle
man.
Leahy as a potential starting option. Like they've got
Oh,
plenty of
Smitty.
guys.
Salivating.
They've got plenty of guys that need those rotation spots that even if they didn't want to rush Quinn Matthews, I think they could pencil in a few of those guys instead of penciling in Matz, Fetty, whatever, and you would still have enough depth to not have to go to Matthews. Like I'm okay going to McGreevy or Summer Bursa in a pinch, even if I'm not sure if they're ready, because the ceilings, I don't think I'm messing something up huge there. Matthews is the type of guy you don't want to rush because you know what kind of pitcher you might have there.
Absolutely.
You don't mess that up. But then, like, if he's throwing good in AAA, why would you waste those bullets on AAA hitters? Like, those arms fall off these days, it feels like. I'm not letting him have a good season in AAA and he comes up to 2026 and his arm's dead. Like, I want those innings now.
Yeah, you don't want to overcook him.
Yeah.
Yeah. And here's the other thing. Like, could Kyle Leahy give you maybe not Leahy because he hasn't started? Could
Let's not do that name.
Miles Michaelis numbers? Like, I feel like he could, and I feel like it'd be way cheaper than obviously Miles Michaelis is signed, right? But let's learn from this and let's let someone else do it for free. I just like you're stuck with Michaelis for this year, but you don't have to be stuck with Matz's money. Like you can move that money and then let someone else do nothing
or Fetty
and still pitch as much as Matz. That's the crazy thing. Like if you're talking about an over under on Matz's innings for the Cardinals this year, it's got to be like 45 and a third, right? There's no way. Are you sure? Fine. How about 65? Matz has only pitched 7 innings for the Cardinals one time in 3 years, and he threw 105 innings in 2023, right? Like you could pay somebody nothing to do that. And they might still give you better production because they'll at least give you bulk. I don't understand it. I really don't get why you can't just go youth movement. It'd be one thing if your veterans were good, okay? Like if you had Corbin Burns on the roster and you're like, oh, we're not going to give opportunities to the young guys because we have 4 really good pitchers. But you don't. You're not the Cardinals of the early 2010s that were rostering Adam Wainwright and Chris Carpenter and Carlos Martinez, right? Like your guys blocking them are Miles Michaelis, Steven Matz, Steven can't stay healthy Matz, and like Eric Fetty. And this is going to stop. I just don't get it. I don't understand why we can't allocate those innings because there's a chance they're even better than those old guys because the old guys aren't good.
You know, a related note. Okay, Matz is due to make $12.5 million. So I don't know if there is interest in him or not. I mean, some of the beat writers have indicated Cardinals have gotten calls on him. I can imagine how those calls would go. Of course, the other side's going to want them to eat a lot of that salary.
Yeah.
And the Cardinals are very rigid about not doing this. They've made it, at least for public consumption, they've said that about Arenado. That may not be the reality. It could be their bargaining position they're staking out. But, okay, even if you have to eat Matz's half of his salary, okay, maybe even a little more. Let's say you eat $8 million of that salary. Number one, you still save money, and number two, you open up a slot for a young pitcher in what is supposed to be the year of the young guy, right?
Yeah.
Arenado, same thing. Basically the working number for him is $64 million left because that takes into account that Colorado's paying $10 million of the $740 million. So even if you eat 50% of that, you're still saving money, and then you can get on. You can get on with your desire to have Gorman at third base, and everything sort of falling in line after that.
Yeah.
Now, again, I repeat, it could be just, well, that's our position because they're going to try to get what they can. But if we find out after the fact with Matz or Arenado that they had a chance to move them, but they just weren't willing to absorb that much of a hit as far as taking on salary or paying off salary, then what was the point of all this?
Yeah.
You know, so
Bernie, I think you'll appreciate this because we've talked about at length now, or I'm sure a lot of people talked about the whole arbitration stuff and that they're a little over $1 million in difference between the three guys that they're going to arbitration with. And I love this tweet so much from Nerds on the Bat. The front office's message of we want to give the young guys opportunity apparently includes the opportunity to go through the arbitration process. Oh, great. But to your point, it was really funny. The Arenado deal, I get it. We're talking about tens of millions of dollars here, so that's quite a bit of money, and it's a complicated contract. It's not super simple, but if I'm sure the difference on Mats, if people are calling, is a matter of a couple $1 million, and if you're still freeing up $4 to $5 million, then it's like go make sure you don't ruffle feathers with the young guys that you're trying to build relationships with and make your young core instead of going to arbitration them over $1 million, but then holding on to Steve Mats over here because you want to only eat $2 million of the instead of $6 million of it, like. They seem to be dying on the wrong hills this offseason.
Oh, man. Well said.
Tyler O'Neill's. That's the goal. Yeah. Jack Flaherty and Tyler O'Neill are the archetype for interactions with the Cardinals front office.
Seriously, just imagine they go to the arbitration because they said, did they settle with Newbar or are they going to? No, they're going to arbitration Newbar, right? Yeah. I mean, imagine that's
settle with anybody.
It's going to go. They settle with a couple, but imagine they go to arbitration with him. It's going to be very similar to the Tyler O'Neill conversation. It's like, hey, dude, when you're on the field, great, but you can't stay on the field, and we don't want to pay you money for it. And I think he'll handle it better than Tyler did. But I mean, just imagine fracturing a relationship with Newbar or Palante or Donovan over this right now. In general, I think we make too much of a big deal about the arbitration stuff because it's just part of the business. But I mean, it's real with the Cardinals. Like we've seen multiple examples now of reasons that whether it's Jack Flaherty, Tyler O'Neill, Ryan Helsley, a fracturing relationship there to varying extents. And I just don't know why in a time like this, when you're hitching your wagons to the young talent, that you're going to risk something like that. But,
yeah, you're trying to promote the young talent and you want the fans to support them, but in effect, you don't fully support them. And the pettiest, silliest one is, Andre Palante, they moved him in the rotation out of necessity on May the 29th. From that point to the end of the season, he had the best ERA among the starters. And I know there's other things we can look at like FIP and Sierra and all that, but I'm just talking about just the standard ERA. He was their most effective starter from May 29th to the end of the season. So, okay, he submitted an arbitration price. It's $150,000 more than your submission. So you're going to go to the mat for $150,000, a guy that was one of the real wonderful, lovely surprises last year and really seems set up to play an important role in your rotation. To use your term, Josh. So you really want to go fight and die on that hill? $150,000?
Yeah.
Nope.
Like I'll be so glad when we can get to the new regime. And I just can't wait for a lot of reasons, but stuff like this is one of those reasons.
Yeah. Let's we've been down in the dumps for a while here. There are some things that we could be excited about. I really want to quickly touch on just like how encouraged have you been, Bernie, specifically by the front office changes this offseason? Because in some respects, the reset has actually been happening with the front office personnel that we've wanted to see. And long term, that's probably going to make a bigger impact than some of the specific trades they could have made this offseason. If you can separate the lack of activity in the major league roster from the front office side of things and the changes that are starting to happen there, how encouraged are you by what you've seen from Chaim Bloom so far?
I'm thrilled because they have to get a lot smarter. It's a top-down thing. They have to get a lot smarter in everything they do. But since we're talking about player development in the minor leagues, to me, they've hired a bunch of really, really smart guys. And those guys are going to hire other really, really smart guys. And they're coming from organizations that know what they're doing in this area, right? And it's just really, really exciting. And kind of a related note to this, it's interesting because, of course, Chaim Bloom's there's no media access, and that's the Cardinals' decision, but he's okay with that too. He doesn't want to be front and center out of respect to Mozeliak. I get it. And he thinks the job that he's got for this year is too massive anyway. So he doesn't want to just be kind of the front man. But the Cardinals have granted permission. Like I know, I worked for KMOX, and I know that, KMOX got the green light from the Cardinals to, you can have Rob Cerfolio on. Yeah, Rob Cerfolio is available. Yeah, we're happy for Rob Cerfolio to talk. And see, that may be a kind of a so what thing to a lot of people. To me, it's a really good thing, because one of the things they're going to have to do is get their fans who are very reluctant to embrace this. And surprisingly, there are way too many of those fans based on my interactions. The only way you're going to be able to communicate a vision and that fans can relate to and process and accept and maybe get excited about is if you let someone as engaging and smart and thoughtful as Cerfolio be out there all the time talking about everything that's going on in this rehabilitation of the minor league system. So, it's not my job to give them PR advice. I understand Bloom not saying much, but Rob Cerfolio is a good talker, man. And he's just like, he's got boundless energy, and his enthusiasm is palpable. I mean, get him out there to spread the message and to get the fans to understand that this is really a pretty cool thing. And it's really exciting, right?
I mean, like, to your point, like Rob, we've been talking. I messaged Rob earlier this offseason. We're planning on having him on the podcast sometime soon. I know he said yes to some other ones, and it's like, well, I can't remember a time where that level of front office executive from the Cardinals was going on podcasts like this. Like, right. I'm encouraged that they're doing that. I wish Bloom was able to do that right now, but maybe I understand, especially because the position that puts Mo in a little bit. And I know that Mo's always been very particular about wanting things to be a unified message. And if everyone's going to read into everything Bloom says, and if it sounds even slightly different than Mo, it's probably going to be the next front page news story. So I understand that one.
I do.
Yeah. Hopefully we're hearing from Cerfolio. Hopefully we're hearing from Larry Dagmore, like all these different guys, Matt Pierpoint, just hear from the guys that are hoping to transform and shape the rest of the organization.
They have to do that. They have to get out in front of that. They really do. Yeah. I think they will. So.
Yeah. Well, I mean, as much as there's promising stuff in the front office on the business and baseball side of that, there's also some things to be excited about with the big league club, and at least at the AAA level. So I was thinking before we finish out, maybe everyone can go around and give one young guy they're excited. I know we were talking about, giving young guys plate appearances, but let's just get, pretty specific with it and say who you think is going to get a lot of run this year, who deserves it, and who you want to see maybe.
Yeah. Bernie, is there a guy you're looking at?
Well, I'm going to – the guy that comes to mind is only because I've had so many fans in my various media platforms ask me about him all the time. And, he's not exactly a kid, but, Matt Koperniak's been around a long time. And, the fact that a slash line last season at Memphis at 309, 370, 512, I know it's AAA pitching, but they put him on the 40-man roster, and they seem to like him. And so let's get it on. I mean, let's see what he's got. With me, it's more about giving an opportunity to someone who's put in the time down there and has shown true improvement. So I would pick him from a standpoint. It's like, I'm really curious about him. I know that a lot of these other guys still maybe have some developing to do. If Matt Koperniak can't be used by this team in a meaningful way this year, then what's the point of all this?
Yeah. For sure.
You got to give him an audition anyway.
Yeah, seriously.
I mean, Sandy just took who I was going to pick in the chat. So that's
I think we all agree on this one. Yeah.
I mean, we talk about him all the time on here, but it's got to be Ivan Herrera for me. And sure. I mean, he's pretty active on Twitter. So if you have a chance, go follow him. But he posts a lot of workout stuff. And I feel like he put a ton of work in last offseason, and we really saw it pay off late. When you're thinking about what Herrera did, he was probably the second best hitter on the team last year. Even though he only got 72 games, 259 plate appearances, he still had a 124 OPS plus, hit over 300 for old school fans that like that. One of just two players on the team, qualified or not, to put up an OPS over 800, which is really exciting. Only Wilson Contreras is better than him. And with Contreras moving to first, there is a chance for Herrera to become the everyday catcher and hopefully catch somewhere around 120 games and then DH 30 other days, right? Like, I want to see Herrera in the lineup every day. You need that bat in the lineup. Now, it seems like he's putting in a lot of work with his arm, trying to get better at throwing runners out. There was a lot of fuss made last year about his inability to throw people out. But let's be honest, nobody on the Cardinals threw anybody out. Even Pedro Pajes, when he was behind the plate, still struggled to control the run game. Wilson Contreras last year struggled to control the run game at times. And with the bigger bases, teams that are more aggressive than ever, it's really tough. And the limited pickoffs, right? And maybe it's not even their fault. The Cardinals have some pitchers that are really slow to the plate. I'm looking at you, Miles Michaelis. Terribly slow to the plate. Guys run on him all the time. So if you're thinking about that, I don't think that's a good reason to not let him catch. Let the man catch. Let him hit. I think the Cardinals would be shameful to not give a healthy Ivan Herrera 140 to 150 games worth of plate appearances. And I think there's a really good chance at the end of next year, we're talking about him as a top 2, top 3 hitter on the team. But it's not just us. It's the whole fan base talking about him that way.
Yeah,
totally agree. Everything you said.
But I don't know. Instead of like going with some of like the big 3 of the walkers and the whatever, I feel like we could talk about that forever. But I think Matthew Liberatore is a guy that I just want to see move into that bullpen role and high leverage in it. Now it seems like they're going to let him start, and I'm going to be like, it's going to go poorly, and please just like keep him in the bullpen. I feel like that's where he sticks. That's where his skill set is best. And I think if you let him start, he's probably like a 5th starter at best. Like, I don't know how much length he can give you. When he did start last year, they would always tell him at the last minute, and like he'd be on like a 50 pitch limit. And it's like, well, that's not sustainable. We don't really know what he can do if he can start, but like it hasn't been good historically. But in the bullpen, I see him being one of the high leverage left-handed options. And I think Jojo Romero probably going to take a back seat to him. Actually, looking at some of the peripherals, I think Liberatore has more future in this bullpen. And, if the Cardinals were smart, they would trade or they would listen on Jojo Romero, but they're not even listening on any of their other guys. So, whatever. But I'm excited to see what he can do if they decide after spring to just leave him in the bullpen. I think he'd be really good.
Yeah. The one thing that gives me hope about Libby being stretched out a little bit is I remember earlier in the season, I was like, I've never heard Chaim Bloom's voice before. I just want to listen to this guy a little bit. And I found a clip from the Rays, and it was after their 2018 draft. And the way he talked about Matthew Liberatore and the excitement on his face, like he clearly they picked him in the first round, and obviously they dealt him later for Randy. So maybe they learned their lesson. But I mean, at one point they were madly in love with this Liberatore guy, what he could do in the rotation. And so I could see how he still maybe has some hope for him doing that. I'm going to give my pick, but then I want to give an interesting thing I heard recently that I want to see if you guys have any opinions on. But I think my pick is Cooper Jerpy this year. He's a guy that struggled with a lot of injuries, but whenever he's on the mound, that dude produces swing and miss like no other. He's extremely deceptive from the left side. I could see him being a guy that gets a quick promotion to the bullpen and get some usage out of that this year, especially since they're already kind of capping his pitch limits in the minors. Why not have that come out of the bullpen for you at the major league level? But then he's a guy that I just think has a lot of upside. He was a first round pick a few years ago. He was an advanced college arm at that stage anyway. So I kind of like Quinn Matthews. It's not like you need to do the Tink Hence treatment here. And he's a 18-year-old who just needs to keep being slow progressing. I think if he's healthy at this point, I want to unleash that guy and see what we have in him rather than kind of like slow playing it a little bit longer. But the really interesting thing, and I thought of you, Bernie, when I heard it because of kind of the idea that they could be blocking Weatherholt going forward, is I was listening to Brian Walton, and he had Kyle Reese on this past week on his podcast. And both of those guys are some of the best when it comes around about Cardinals minor league stuff. And they both were at least playing around the idea that the Cardinals could give JJ some time in center field this year.
Ooh.
That as a natural shortstop and a guy that a lot of people believe can stick there, that he has some of the tools and the ability that could play in center. Now, I don't think anyone would say that this guy is a future Gold Glover in the making out there in center. Sure. But if he's a guy that you try him there, right? If it fails miserably, you don't need to keep him on that. But he's not a guy like Walker that already had defensive concerns as a prospect anyways. He's a guy that you kind of think is a baseball player that can play wherever you got him at. He's going to figure out how to play it. If he can find a way to play average center field and then the kind of bat that he boasts, that's an extremely valuable player that allows you to continue use to JC, Donovan, Gorman. I don't think that means JJ Weatherholt becomes a 12-year center fielder in the major league level, but for the first few years of his career, could he find playing time in center field at a position where the Cardinals just are consistently rotating through guys who cannot hit to save their lives, really? And instead, you get a guy like JJ Weatherholt in there, and you keep Donovan, you keep Gorman, you keep Sajacy, you keep Burleson in the lineup. I think it's at least worth trying. They should do that right now if they're going to do it, not do the whole Walker thing where it's like, oh, you're within months of a major league call up. Now let's change your position. But like if they tried it this year and it's like, hey, JJ, if it doesn't work, we know you could play second. We know you could play third. We know you could probably stick at shortstop. But let's see what you got here. And this could get you to St. Louis quickly. Would you be interested in them trying something like that? Or does like PTSD of the Walker situation be like, let's not mess with a top prospect position right now?
Well, the reason I would be in favor of at least looking at that, trying it, is because the people that are going to be in charge of his progress or lack thereof, I trust. They're smart. Yeah. They know what they're doing. That's why they've been brought in. So I would trust their judgment. So, yeah, I mean, that's a pretty exciting possibility. By the way, Sandy, I wanted to say, I was looking at something the other day. I wanted to go back if I can, and Ivan Herrera, I was looking at the last 2 seasons, catchers that are 24 or younger that had at least 250 plate appearances. Sure. The only guy who's been better than Herrera offensively is Diaz in Houston. And it's by a sliver, the WRC plus it's separated by 1. And if of course Diaz has got a lot more slug at this point, but Herrera's on base percentage was about about 67, 70 points higher than Diaz. His batting average is more than 20 points higher. And that's why I'm with you, brother, because it's like, it's so frustrating. In 5 of the last 6 years, the Cardinals have been no better than 10th in the National League in runs scored. And they have this potential gold mine, like a really, really good offensive catcher who draws walks too, right? And yet it's so obvious. And yet I'm thinking we're all going to be sitting around in June. We're going to be doing this again. And we're like, what is wrong with these people? Seriously. Guys like this don't come along very often.
Yeah.
They don't even know what they have. That's what's so scary about it, right? Go ahead, brother. I'm sorry.
No, I mean, he's elite. If you go look at his baseball savant page, there's so much red on there. Oh, yeah. Ivan Herrera's ex-WOBA last year was 366, which he doesn't qualify because the Cardinals refused to give him an opportunity. But that's top 10%. His expected batting average was 293. So it's not like he's getting lucky and outperforming. Like Michael Ciani was bad and outperformed by a lot. And the Cardinals are going to turn around and give him another 100 starts. Like, what are we doing? You're absolutely right. They have no idea what they're missing in him. And sure, Pedro Pages defensively is awesome. The pitchers love throwing to him. But that's just not enough justification to keep a bat like Ivan Herrera out of the lineup anymore. He's already proven that he is a legit big league hitter. You need to give him this opportunity if you're the Cardinals. I couldn't agree more. He could be an elite hitter. Also, like defensively, he's not even that bad. His fielding run value last year was just below average. His pop time is slow, but it's not that slow. His caught stealing above average, 15th percentile. So it's not like he's worst in baseball. We're not talking about Jordan Walker in right field. We're talking about someone who's just not that good a defender. We're definitely not talking about someone that sucks, though. But I think Cardinals fans, having Yadi for 20 years, are really spoiled, where we're incapable of realizing when a catcher is solid, but they're not the greatest defensive catcher of all time. Like not everyone's going to be Yadi or Molina. Not everybody is going to keep other teams for multiple decades from running against you. It just doesn't work that way. It's a once in a lifetime thing to have him behind the plate. So...
it's interesting because the kind of generic defensive rating that Fangraphs gives to players, Herrera's rated higher than Diaz defensively.
Yeah,
but Houston has no problem playing Diaz because of his bat, and here the Cardinals, who have no offense, they're reluctant. And I defend Ali Marmol as a lot. I really do, but this is one thing I'm looking at that. In advanced, I'm really bugged by because I think he is susceptible to being influenced by veteran pitchers who want things a certain way, right? Which is why he was part of throwing Contreras under the bus in 2023. Shameful. I don't trust Ali, and I'll tell him this. I will have a text message and conversation with him and tell him this. to be fair to him. I don't trust him that he'll do the right thing instead of being swayed by veteran pitchers who basically are making requests of their own self-interest. It's time that the Cardinals get away from that crap.
Oh man, let's hope. Let's hope.
You
Hey,
like
I
that?
want to thank Neilio real quick for the quick donation. You've been a great advocate of the
Thank you.
podcast and a membership, and so really appreciate that. And love from KC. Hope you're doing well.
Thank you, Neil.
Yeah, and just to wrap us all up, winter warm-up is this weekend, and we're going to have a chance to talk to some of the personnel for the Cardinals, some of the players. I'm sure Josh will ask some very hard questions to Mr. Mo. But I just wanted to ask you, Bernie, if there's any storylines that you're looking at this weekend from the players, from the front office as we start the season.
Andrew, it's kind of like some of the stuff we've been talking about. I want to hear what Ali Marmol's going to tell media about how he's going to handle the catcher position, how he's going to handle center field.
Yeah.
I want to, from what I understand, the DeWitts will be available for fans to question him. And listen, fans are polite in these settings, and that's fine. I have no problem with that. It's one of my bugaboos in a long time being in the media when I used to do phone interviews, things like that. I'm always civil to the guests. I ask the questions that have to be asked, but there's too many people out there. I think because of social media, they think it should be some kind of like Jerry Springer show where like, if I'm asking Mo questions, that at some point I'll just say like, you're a horrible human being. You're not going to talk on my show anymore. You're disgusting. It's like people, you can ask questions without being a vulgarian and a rude, awful human being. Okay. You can ask questions. So what I want to see, I'm curious about the tone of all the questions that'll be going on, not with the players, but with the manager, the president of baseball ops, ownership. And I do expect people to be polite. But I'm still curious about the tone and whether there's going to be anything that they're going to be able to say that will change some of the perceptions out there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that'd be really interesting. I think we're slated with the DeWitts on Monday, and Ollie's set to go Monday too, and then Mo to kick us off on Saturday. So we'll see. We haven't heard from the DeWitts publicly since the end of season press conference. So I've heard from Mo a few times. I'll be really interested to hear kind of what what their perception of this offseason's been, and if it's been what they've envisioned. And I'm sure they're not going to throw Mo under the bus or anything, but it'll be. I just want to hear how do they want to explain it. I'm very intrigued. So.
And I want to know what's on the fans' mind when they have the rare opportunity to directly address the higher ups. And again, the fans that are down there want to be down there and they're enthusiastic. I don't expect any ugliness. And there's no need for ugliness. Just ask your question straightforward.
Yeah. I remember one of the best questions I felt like was asked last year came at Mo's public fan section in the ballpark village when someone kind of asked, like, I think they kind of addressed like, hey, you've got a lot of 1-year contracts. You got guys coming on the books. Like if this season doesn't go well, could you head toward like a rebuild? And Mo's answer kind of started to set the tone for if things didn't go well in 2024 and they didn't, that they could go in this direction. And it was like, okay, like they do have a lot of parachutes built within there to kind of get out of payroll. And so to your point, Bernie, I expect it to be civil, but I expect some really hard and great questions, and hopefully we get some good answers out of it, or at least some revealing answers. I don't know if they'll be what we want to hear, but at least we know where they stand. So Bernie, as always, want to thank you for coming on. Really appreciate it. I'm sure most of you, if not all of you, already subscribed to Bernie's YouTube channel. So make sure to go check out the Bernie Miklasz Show if you haven't already. Check out Underdog Fantasy if you want to get on some fantasy action this offseason, whether it's college basketball, football, baseball in the upcoming season. Use our promo code CARDS for first time free pick'em or $1,000 bonus offer, up to $1,000 bonus offer. 314 Sports Cards and Collectibles. Be sure to check them out as well. Bernie, any last thoughts as we head out?
No, man, I just always enjoy talking with you guys, and thanks for having me on, and looking forward to the next one. And in 2025, which we're in, I'm going to try to do some different things with my YouTube channel. I think I should start doing a live stream, once a week or something. So I'm going to be calling or texting Andrew basically with one word: help. Help.
Well, he's the man.
I want to diversify some things, so and get more people involved. I'd like to really like to start having guests on too, just one guest at a time, maybe once a week, so I'll be lining you gentlemen up for that. Anyway, I appreciate you all. Thank you very much.
Looking forward to it. We appreciate you as well, Bernie. And as always, thanks for checking out the Deal on the Cards podcast. Like and subscribe, helps the channel a ton. Rate the show if you're on audio. And I think we'll be going live a couple times this weekend with winter warm up. Not totally sure what.
I'll have all the interviews posted. Hopefully.
Oh yes,
the ones that people are really interested. I might post. Hey, maybe I think we're leading off with Chris Roycroft and like Drew Rom. So if people really want to see those, we can.
Rom.com.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the one thing that I've never really understood about winter warm up is they don't. I mean, I think this post dispatch will try to post those, but those interviews aren't like publicly recorded typically. So we'll get those on the channel. I know that we're allowed to do that, so we'll get that out there. But then also we'll be reacting and we'll have some stuff to talk about. It might not be moves, but there will be stuff to talk about finally. So looking forward to that.
I was surprised to hear Nolan Gorman's not going to be there, and I don't know whether that's been revised or not. I know he recently was married. But I can understand Arenado. It doesn't make any sense to have him there, but I'm a little surprised with Gorman. I hope they don't think they're shielding him from something. That one had me scratching my head. It's probably no big deal, but I just wanted to bring that up.
It was odd. Yeah, because I think last year the only two that were missing were Goldie and Nolan, which made sense. Like they've kind of earned the right to step out of those type of things if they want to. But it was weird not seeing Gorman on there. But there are a lot of the young prospects up there too. I know they tried to highlight some of those. I think Quinn Matthews has some time and Tank and some of those guys. So it'll be an interesting weekend. But as always, thanks for checking in the cards. Like and subscribe helps the channel a ton. Thanks, Bernie, for popping on, and we'll see you guys next time.
Thanks, Bernie.